All right. So we are doing lesson 6 and it is titled Face Off. Okay. Yes, just like that, face off. And that's because we're gonna face off against each other essentially. You're gonna face off with yourself actually. Like I was saying earlier, our objective for today is more of a it's more of a like an argumentative objective as opposed to a statistical one, but it's about being able to create arguments for your side, for what you agree on, okay, using statistical concepts. So our objective is that you will informally compare two or more distributions using your knowledge of shape, center, and spread to answer statistical questions. So our knowledge of shape, right? Our knowledge of center, our knowledge of spread. So we need to consider those three categories when we are comparing distributions and then making a decision of which option is better. You will learn how to find the difference between two means and two medians using a histogram or dot plot or even a box plot. Our essential concept, okay, the main takeaway is that writing and saying precise comparisons between groups in which variability is present, okay, based on center, spread, shape, and unusual outcomes help to make statements in context of data. Actual comparison statements should use terms such as less than, about the same as, more than, etc. So when you're comparing different distributions, and let's say you're comparing means, right? You can find the mean of both of the distributions and say, you know, the mean for this one is less than this one, or the median is more than this, or you know, if I were to find the IQR for this distribution is more than this distribution, meaning that there's more variation in this distribution. So you're literally comparing the shapes, the centers, and the spreads of our data, okay? So it's all about being able to not only find this information, but also compare and determine what each thing means for the distributions. So we're going to actually jump straight to this part here. Wait a minute. Okay, this is the part right here. I want us to focus on this. So you guys have learned important features of distributions, right? That will allow you to make decisions when working with data. These features that we've talked about, these features are the shape of our distributions, the center of our distributions, and the spread of our distributions. So more specifically, you're going to be able to use your knowledge of the measures of center and the measures of spread to compare two distributions, okay, in order to make a decision. So before we move on, let's clarify, okay, what we mean. Measures of center. Okay, what are some measures of center that we've learned so far? What are some measures?
Median,
The median is absolutely.
the mean.
And the mean, yes, absolutely. Well done, Alexander. Okay, and Janelle, thank you for in the chat. Okay, so our two measures of center that we've talked about so far, so well said by Alexander and Janelle and Maddie in the chat, are the median and the mean, right? They're found different ways, right? The mean is an average of all of our data points. The median is literally the middle point, okay? Now, with each of these, we also have a measure of spread, right? So what are the measures of spread that we've learned so far? What are the measures of spread that we've learned so far? There are two of those. Measures of spread. One of them we literally did during lesson 5. We learned it on our last lesson.
The the minimum and maximum.
The minimum and maximum are not a measure of spread, but they help us to find the range, which can be not necessarily a measure of spread, but it tells us like how wide spread out our entire data is,
Is
right?
it the quartiles?
It's the interquartile range, so you're onto it, right? The IQR, the interquartile range. So we use the quartiles to find the IQR. So IQR is one of them. And the IQR is used with the median, right? Because the IQR, the quartiles, that's directly connected with the median. So if we're working with the median, then we should be using the measure of spread of the IQR, right? What's the other measure of spread? What's the other measure of spread that we learned with mean, that we can use with mean? It's another 3-letter thing, abbreviation.
Is it the MAD?
It is the MAD. It is the MAD. Yes, yes, yes. Was that Dallas?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yes. Right. The MAD, the mean of absolute deviations. Right. In the name, it has the word mean. Mean of absolute deviations. So for a measure of spread, right, when we're working with the mean, we use the MAD as the measure of spread, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. So if we find that the median is a better measure of center for our data, right? Suppose we find that the median, we're like, you know what, this data, the shape tells me that the median is probably the one I should look at for the measure of center. Then if you're looking at the median as a measure of center, you should be looking at the IQR as your measure of spread, right? However, if your distribution, your shape tells you, oh, you know what, I could use the mean here. The mean makes sense here. And if we use the mean, then we should have that the MAD, right? Our MAD is our better measure of spread to compare with the mean. So speaking on that, right? What kind of shapes can our distribution have? What kind of shapes can our distribution have? What are the shapes?
Symmetrical.
Symmetrical, very good, Alexander.
Left skew and right skew.
Yes, left skew and right skew, right? And remember, the skew refers to the tail. Which way is the tail going, right? Not the hump, but the tail. So we have symmetrical, we have left skew, and we have right skew, right? When you have a skew, should you use mean or median? When your data is skewed.
Is it mean?
Mean.
Median.
Median.
Yes. Okay. If you have a skew in your data, the median is a better measure of center, right? The median is a better measure of center. If you have a symmetrical data, if you have a symmetric
mean,
data,
the mean,
then you use the mean. Yeah, because the mean, there's a nice symmetry on both sides. So you don't have like these really high numbers or these really low numbers you got to deal with, skewed to one side. So in the perfect world, right, the symmetric world, mean is our best bet. But if we have any kind of skew onto one side, then you want to kind of compare the median more, okay? I really hope that this review was something that you guys found helpful, okay? And something that you guys were maybe taking notes on, right? So skewed shape means median and IQR, right? Shorthand. Skewed shape means median and IQR. Okay, symmetric shape means mean and MAD, right? That's literally what it comes down to. So something to help you guys decide on what kind of statistical data should you be trying to compare when you're looking at your different dot plots or histograms or box plots, okay? So that brings us to our first journal entry, ladies and gentlemen. Our first journal entry is a scenario. And this scenario we're going to be working with, okay? So it says a data science student rides in a car on her way to school. On some days, she takes the surface streets, and on other days, she takes the freeway, okay? She decides to collect data about the length of time it takes her to commute to school by taking the surface streets versus taking the freeway, right? Commute means to travel, like travel to school or drive to school. So she's comparing the time that it takes her to get to school using surface streets versus the time that it takes her to get to school using the freeway. The dot plots below show the distribution of each method of her commute. So we're going to be looking at those dot plots in a bit. But first things first, based on the data that she's decided to collect, okay, I want you guys to write down what statistical question or questions the student in this scenario is trying to answer. And what is a statistical question, or what are some statistical questions that the student is trying to answer based on the data that she's collecting, okay? I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes. You're doing this in your journal, okay? So if we take a look here, there it is. So our journal for lesson 6 starts off with this exact scenario, okay, and your question here. So for lesson 6 here, you guys are giving me 2 minutes to get to see what kind of statistical questions that she might be trying to come up with. All right, starting now. Okay, practically up in time. All right, so let's see those questions in the chat, guys. Let's see those questions in the chat. All right, let's see here. Ooh, a lot of you guys coming through with these questions. I love it. Yes, Alexander, great. Okay, let's see. Alexander, that's a good question, but yes, it's a statistical question that's very that's basic and only uses one variable, right? What kind of statistical question can you come up with that's maybe comparing freeway and surface streets? Yes, is she spending more time taking the streets than the freeway? Is the shorter route taking the streets than the freeway? I don't know about shorter, Janelle. Great question, but she's not collecting data on distance. She's only collecting data on time. Okay, so her data doesn't include her data doesn't include distance traveled. And that last question, what route is taking up a shorter time to get to school? That one's great. What is the length of time on the streets than the freeway? Good, Evelyn. Good, Kenya, I love that one. Is taking the freeway faster than taking the surface streets? Yes. How long does it take to travel on the freeway compared to surface streets? To the side that can't speak. Which method is the fastest to travel, freeways or surface streets? Good. Which method of transportation is faster, the freeway or the streets? Comparing the freeway to the streets, which way of the transportation is faster? Good, different wording for the same question. I like it, Val. What two streets does she take on her way to school? Ishmael, she's not collecting data about her route. Again, she's not collecting data about the route that she's taking to school. She's only collecting data on the time that it takes her to get to school when she uses surface streets and versus when she uses the freeway. It's only time, right? Literally, it's telling you If she decides to collect data about the length of time that it takes her to commute to school. So she is only collecting data about the length of time. There's nothing about her routes. There's nothing about her distance traveled, just how long it takes her to get to school. Okay, which form of transport takes longer? Okay. How much more time does it take for me to get to school by the surface streets compared to using the freeway? Yeah, now we're looking at like a difference comparison, right, Maddie? Very good, right? So you're not only asking which one's faster, you're saying how much more time am I spending this way over that way? Good. Which transport takes longer? Compared to surface streets, how fast is taking the freeway to school? Yep. How much time and what are the lengths of the surface streets and freeway from our home to our school? Again, right? We're not looking at distance, it's only about time. Which form of transport? Yeah. Okay, great questions, guys. But you really need to focus in on the fact that you can only answer the questions that you have data about, okay? That's something that we're still struggling with. You want to make sure, I know that there's a lot of other questions that you have about the scenario. I get that. And that's natural to have those questions. But you want to ask a statistical question, especially when data is already collected for you. You want to ask a statistical question that you have the data for, right? And some of us learned this the hard way when we were doing the end of unit project, where you guys had to use our own data and try to answer statistical questions. And you're like, but we just don't have the data for this. Yeah, because that's then if you don't have the data to answer that statistical question, that's not a question you should be asking for this data set, right? So you always want to be very cognizant, especially if data has already been collected for you. Be very cognizant about what the data includes, right? You have to look at the variables. And in this case, the variables are just simply freeway and surface streets and the time that it takes her to travel on each one on different days. Okay. So that being said, we're going to jump on to very good stat questions, guys. We're going to jump onto our 2.6a, comparing commute times with dot plots. Okay. So looking at our 2.6a document, it's a very basic document here. We have comparing commute times, and we're given this the same exact scenario. A data science student rides in a car on her way to school. Some days she takes surface streets, other days she takes the freeway. She decides to collect data about the length of time it takes her to commute to school, okay, by taking the surface streets versus taking the freeway. The dot plots below show the distributions of each method of her commute. So we see that on the top dot plot, okay, the top dot plot here, we have our, I am sharing this, right? Okay, yeah. We have her freeway times, okay? We have her freeway time. So at the bottom is her commute time, so in minutes. This is how often she experienced that much commute time. So over here, if we're looking at 30 minutes, it took her one time, it took her 30 minutes to travel by the freeway. Over here, it took her four different times, it took her 39 minutes to travel by freeway. Okay, over here, 3 different times, it took her, let's see, 45, 46, 47, 48 minutes to travel by freeway, right? So 3 different times there. So the dots represent the frequency, how often. Okay, and then of course she has her surface streets. And again, same setup for the dot plot, but now these are the times for the surface streets. So commute time in minutes, frequency here. So over here, it took her 35 minutes, 3 different times. It took her 35 minutes to get to school using the surface streets. Okay. So looking at these distributions, you want to think of their shape. Are they symmetric? Are they right skewed? Are they left skewed? Okay. You want to think of a measure of center. Okay. Should I look at the median? Maybe should I guesstimate the median? Should I guesstimate the mean? And then of course about minimums and maximums, right? Alexander brought up the min and max as a measure of spread. And you know what? That's not a bad way to look at it, because when we're looking at the range of our data, right, it's good to look at what's the highest and what's the lowest. So that's also something to consider. And then of course you have your IQR and your MAD. The MAD might be a little bit difficult to calculate with this data. Just throwing that out there. You know, you guys saw how difficult, like how much time it took. It's not difficult. It's just very time consuming. So either way, right? Shape, center, spread. Based on the dot plots, which method of commute would you recommend to the student? Surface streets or freeway? And I want you to justify your recommendation, okay, using your knowledge of shape, center, and spread. Okay. I don't want to hear opinion. I don't want to see opinion. Okay. Opinion doesn't matter here. You're looking at the data and only the data. And you're using the data that's collected here. Okay. Your opinion does not matter. It does not matter. Oh, streets have red lights. Freeway doesn't. That doesn't matter. That's side data, right? That is side data. Or not even data. That's side information. That's side opinion. Okay. The only justification that you should have here is the shape, the center, and the spread. So the maximum time it takes to travel on a freeway was this. The minimum was this compared to, you know, the streets. It was this and this, right? The median time for commuting on the freeway was this versus for the streets, it was this. So obviously it's better, you know. So you're literally comparing the data, not our real world opinions of both situations. Okay. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to do this. So obviously any calculations you're going to do, you're going to need to make sure that you do them quickly or that you do them as guesstimates. Okay. Using your visual knowledge. Okay. And of course, educated guesstimates. And then put down your justifications here. Obviously, I should not see a single sentence here. Okay. At the very, very least, you should have at least 3 sentences here. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to make your decisions here for 2.6a, and then we will move on. Tell me in the chat which side you recommended. Okay. Yes, absolutely, Val. You can compare the 2 dot plots when answering. Absolutely. That's the expectation. Streets. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of streets. Samayi, good use of that word. Very good. Very good with that. Let's see, surface streets, right? Streets. Ooh, Alexander, I like this. Oh, interesting. Okay. So Alexander, you say it took her less time to get to school on the surface streets, right?
Well, yeah.
Include the data for that. So you're saying less time, right? But tell me less time because it took her this much time with the freeway and it took her this much time with surface streets.
I think I did tell you that. Didn't I?
No,
oh, okay.
No, I'm giving you pointers, hon.
Okay.
Right? You did good.
You're right.
So you can always add on to it and be more specific. The more specific you are with your data, the more convincing it is, right? Wow, a lot of you guys went with streets. Give me a second, guys. All right. So the more specific you are, right, with your data, the more specific you are with all that. Look at that. Yes. Very good. Much better, Alexander. Good job. You know, you're a very good writer, sir.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So it's coming in handy here, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So most of you guys are giving me streets, okay? But one of the things that I learned as a debater for like 10 years was that the best way to defend your side is to know your opponent's side as well. One of the best ways to be able to defend your side of a situation is to know exactly what the other side has going for them. And at the same time, you are able to identify the other side's weaknesses. Okay. So one of the things that we want to also be able to do is we want to be able to see the data on both sides, or on both situations, or both distributions in this case. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to explore both sides of the situation. So what you're going to do in your next IDS journal section is you are going to imagine that you are going to debate your classmates. And I say imagine with a very, very sad heart, because I really wish that you guys could actually debate each other. But so you're going to imagine that you're going to debate your classmates versus you're going to debate them freeway versus street. Okay. Even though most of you guys were street this time around, but let's see, maybe freeway has something going for it. So you're going to imagine that you are in two teams, team freeway and team street. And you're going to put yourself into both positions. So team street, you're going to think of team street stuff, and then you're going to take that hat off and you're going to put in team freeway hat, and you're going to think of team freeway stuff. Okay. So you're going to look at and see what is team street, what does the streets have going for it? Why would I recommend streets? And then you're going to look at it from the other perspective and you say, okay, why would I recommend freeway? Right? Why would I recommend freeway? Let's forget about the streets for a second. Why would I recommend freeway? So the best way to organize your thoughts here is to make a 2-column list. Okay, one for streets and one for freeway. So in your IDS journal, you're going to make a 2-column table, which should already be there for you. One is labeled team freeway, the other is labeled team street. And what you're going to do is you are going to spend time comparing and contrasting the benefits of freeway versus street travel. Okay, so you're going to write the benefits of freeway travel, and then you're going to write the benefits of street travel. Now, I know most of you guys are like, well, Ms. K, I recommended street. Yes, I understand, right? But again, one of the best ways, right, to have a defense is to know your offense, right? And it's to know your opponent's offense. So sports terms there, David, that was for you. And so you want to be able to know how to defend yourself with what your opponent is going to come at you with. So you need to think about your opponent's recommendation from like them, like think like the enemy, right? I hate to say it that way, but think like your opponent. So you're going to put yourself into their shoes and say, okay, if I was defending freeway, what would I say about defending freeway? Why would I say freeway is a good thing, right? Using the data. All of this, underlying on all of this is using the data. So your benefits should all be data related. Okay, I shouldn't hear, well, freeway doesn't have red lights and streets, and I shouldn't hear any of that. Well, streets, you got a Starbucks you can stop at if you wanted to. Like, I shouldn't hear any of that, right? It should only be about the data. So after you're done writing some of the benefits for freeway and street, then you're going to rank the benefits, okay, for each column from strongest to weakest. So out of my different benefits, which one is the strongest, right? That's what I want to start with. And then which one's the weakest? So you're ranking them, and you're going to put the number 1 next to it for the strongest, and then 2 for the second best, and so on. And then you're looking at that information, you're going to make your second decision again, and you're going to say, okay, in this case, am I team freeway or am I team street? Okay, so all of this has already been set up for you in your journal. So if I go back to our Google Doc, our journal here, okay, you can see that the next thing in your journal is question being posed. Which is better travel option, freeway or street? So you're going to put the benefits of freeway here based on the data. So you're still looking at 2.6a. You're still looking at 2.6a in your freeway dot plot, okay? And then benefits of traveling street, okay, go here. Now I know there's 5 slots, but I'm gonna say I want a minimum of 3 per. So each of you are doing both, okay? It's not one or the other, you're doing both. Okay, and I want a minimum of 3 on each one. And then you're gonna rank them, and then you're gonna tell me, you know what, I'm still team streets, or I changed my mind, I'm now team freeway, okay? So any questions on the directions? I know that was a lot, okay? So recap, you have team freeway, you have team street. You're gonna give me 3 benefits of the freeway, you're gonna give me 3 benefits of the street, it doesn't matter which team you're on. You're gonna rank the benefits from strongest to weakest. And then you're gonna tell me what team you wanna be on. All based on the data, absolutely, okay? All based on the data, okay? So I'm gonna give you guys 5 minutes. Yes, Ishmael, you're writing down what in your data, right, is a benefit for each thing. Okay, so what in your data, so for example, team freeway, right? Team freeway, looking at it, right? I can see that one time it took her 11 minutes on the freeway. So I could say, you know, that the lowest time that she can travel with the freeway is 11 minutes, right? That's one data point. So the minimum time it takes for her to travel on the freeway is 11 minutes versus, you know, in that case, you're thinking versus with a minimum time it took on the street, right? Yeah, that's fine. You can put a range. Absolutely, you can put a range, Janelle. Yes. Okay, Janelle asked, can I put like a range of 10 to 15? Absolutely, yes. Okay. And then for vice versa, for surface streets, right? You could say the maximum time it took her to travel on surface streets was 43 minutes versus 50 minutes on the freeway. Right? That's a benefit. Yes? Okay, so data, and yes, you can use those. So 5 minutes starting now, guys, and try to make them good, y'all. Try to make them good. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully you were able to get some benefits down, okay, for each of the columns, both for team freeway and team street, and where you were able to decide what team that you are going to go ahead and be a part of, okay? Ooh, dang, Val, big undertaking there. Big undertaking. Okay, guys, I can give you 1 more minute. Okay, I can give you 1 more minute. I'm sorry, I can't give you more than that because we need to get through the lesson. I am so sorry. So I can give you guys 1 more minute, okay? Uno más. So you're looking at 2.6b. You're going to compare. So you're given 2 third-grade teachers, Mr. Molyneux and Miss Johnson, recently gave their students an exam. The scores for each class are displayed in the histograms below. You're even given this information here. The mean score for each class was 80%. Okay, so they gave you the mean. Unlike with the dot plots, right? They actually gave you the mean here. The mean score for each class was approximately 80%. Okay, now it's up to you to decide if that's the center you want to use here, or if you would much rather find the median or anything of that nature. Okay, but the question at hand is this: based on the histograms, which exam do you think was easier? Okay, yes, you can use the min and the max. Absolutely, Janelle, absolutely. Which exam do you think was easier? Use your knowledge of shape, center, and spread to justify your response, right? Like looking at these histograms, I'm noticing a difference in shape, right? No, Samai, if I can't think that, you can't think that. Okay, so I'm noticing a difference in shape here. So that might be something, yeah, absolutely, Janelle. So that might be something to consider, okay? So looking at this, so what you're gonna do, and I'm gonna give you the rest of the class period to do this, okay? You're going to answer this question here, and you're going to defend it using the data, your knowledge of shape, center, and spread. Then you're going to come over to your journal, and you're going to do the same thing. You have 2 columns here, one for why Mr. Molyneux's test is easier, one for why Miss Johnson's test is easier, okay? You're gonna write your reasonings. You're gonna write your reasons for each one. Then you're gonna tell me which team you agree with. Do you think, are you team Mr. Molyneux or are you team Miss Johnson, right? For the easier test. And then you're gonna write your rebuttal. Notice our rebuttal here is a little bit different. It actually uses a little bit more of like measures of center, outliers and such things, IQR. So it has a lot of different things going on. It might give you a hint on what kind of data to look at, okay? And you're gonna finish off with your journal. So the rest of the period, you're working on 2.6b and doing the whole process over in your IDS journal. List, team, rebuttal, okay? So I'm gonna let you guys do that. And then we're gonna, don't leave, because we're at the end of the class, I'm gonna talk about your homework real quick and then dismiss you, okay? All right, so get to it. You guys have a solid 10 minutes.